And good evening, everybody. Welcome to Hoops HD's June Sessions podcast, streaming to
Oh,
you live here at the very end of the athletic year. July 1st will be the start of the next athletic year. First, let's start by introducing the cast of characters with us. As always, first of all, I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. Directly to my left, at least as I see it on my screen, is John Stalika coming to us from Ohio. John, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing quite well here in the heart of Big East Country and now the heart of another conference, which we will be introducing later on.
Yes.
yes.
um, Also, Joby Fortson with us. Joby, how are you doing there?
Doing well. It's baseball season here in the Virginia area.
Oh yeah, you've got big news. One win away from the championship series right now for those.
So we could lose to Vanderbilt for the second year in a row.
Oh yeah. Uh, and finally with us, and coming in with, we've got big news because of our main topic for the night as well as one of his favorite topics is David Griggs. David, how are you tonight? I know
I
we're not
am fantastic.
topic yet, but what is our main topic?
Well, I mean, we're going to discuss at long last. We're finally going to give the people the show they deserve. Our main topic tonight is the border war between Kansas and Missouri, the history of it, why it needs to be brought back, and what we're going to do, I think, to try and get this rivalry started again. I'm excited about this. I just can't wait for this.
Yeah, this is going to be
I'm
exciting.
so glad that you decided to do this.
And we've actually got a plan that you're going to lay out how to actually bring the rivalry back.
Yes,
Correct.
yes, we are.
This is real exciting. But before we get to that,
Well, wait, that's our top story. Why don't we start with that?
no, well, we want to hold that for the last. You know, to save the best for last. You hear that expression, David?
Okay. Well, there's nothing else to really talk.
Well, other than that book behind you, but that's.
Oh yeah. Well,
That's what you
I like
call it
the
now,
article.
a book?
Yeah.
Not quite a book, a magazine. But anyhow, we do want to get to some news and notes first. And we're going to start off, I think, with probably the biggest news, something that just a couple weeks ago, David, you posted on the website saying it should happen, and it did. Well, I guess it started with Northern Kentucky, actually, who announced about a month ago that they were going to be leaving the Atlantic Sun, heading out to the Horizon League beginning next season. You posted on the website, this is the perfect opportunity for the team of the people, and it happened.
Yeah. I think that this is good for everyone involved. I think it's good for the Horizon League. It gets them into the Cincinnati market. They have a good TV deal. It gives them another baseball team, which is something they needed because I think they needed to get to 7 or whatever it was to keep their automatic qualifier status. It's great for Northern Kentucky because I think there is more natural and regional rivalry within the Horizon League. You know, you're talking Wright State and Cleveland State, Youngstown. You got Valpo. It's just a much better geographic fit for them. Their facilities are perfect for it, and of course, it was great for the team of the people because it essentially opened up a spot in the Atlantic Sun. And the only bad thing that NJIT brings to this conference, and it is the only bad thing, is that they are somewhat of a geographic outlier. For the Atlantic Sun to lose what is a transitional program, no offense to Northern Kentucky, but to lose that and add a program that is on the rise, that is putting money into athletics, that is building a new stadium or arena, I'm sorry, and that made the semifinals of the CIT, I think this raises the basketball profile of the Atlantic Sun. I just think it was a great move. I hate realignment, but in this particular case, I think everybody won here.
Well, a lot of realignment has been about media markets, and now we're putting the New York media market into the Atlantic Sun, and isn't that huge for the A-Sun also?
I would think, yeah.
I mean, Joby, I think you wanted to comment on that?
Yeah, we use the term realignment. There's no realignment when you're talking about NJIT. They were unaligned.
Yeah.
So this is just I mean, everybody. I don't think there's going to be a soul who finds it irritating, except for maybe the geographic component. This is an outstanding move for both parties. The A-Sun is already a relatively, as far as the under the radar conferences, not half bad. I mean, you have teams that have won in the NCAAs recently in that league, and NJIT won at Michigan last year. Not a great Michigan team, but a Power 5 team NJIT can join that group and help build upon what the ASUN's already at a small level doing.
Well, and John, I know you've been a huge NJIT fan. I was just disappointed you're not wearing your NJIT swag tonight. But I would think, and it may be a little too early in the season, or too early before going to next season to do this, but I would think NJIT may be one of the favorites to win this league next year.
Well, it also depends on how many people Florida Gulf Coast has coming back, and then you also have North Florida, which is going to be coming off of their title in the Atlantic Sun last year.
Well, I mean, I think Gulf Coast is losing most of the remaining talent that it had left over from that Sweet 16 run. Are we still connected?
Are we?
Okay, I thought we lost. I heard a noise there for a second, but
yeah.
Even with Gulf Coast losing talent, I think it may be North Florida versus NJIT next year. Again, a little too early to make those predictions, but NJIT has everybody back from that CIT semifinal team.
Yeah, and I believe North Florida does as well. This is an upcoming North Florida team, and what about? Don't forget about Upstate. I mean, I think this is going to be an exciting league, and oh my God, how great is this? That NJIT next year will likely be hosting a conference tournament game.
At least one.
Yeah.
So we're going to definitely have to have a correspondent at that game.
Yes. Oh man.
So again, that's the big news in, as Joby pointed out correctly, alignment, not realignment.
The other unalignment.
New Jersey's on the Atlantic. The sun comes up there. I mean, sun. There you go.
Living in New Jersey, I can vouch that we have the sun almost every day comes out here. Almost every day. Well, with that, we may get to our
top story.
Well, actually, before we get to our top story, one more piece of news or notes here. Well, it's just a few weeks now. The NCAA has approved some rules changes for the men's game heading into next season. We'll start with the biggest one. We spoke about this a bit last month, the 30-second shot clock. Joby, what's your impression of knocking 5 seconds off the shot clock here?
I think you're going to see. I'm not necessarily in love with it because, yeah, we'll have more possessions, more crappy possessions. I mean, yeah, and it's not. This is not the Virginia guy talking pack line or Wisconsin style. Oh, it's going to hurt. It'll actually help Virginia. It'll help Wisconsin. It'll help those defenses because they'll have even less. Teams will even have less time to try to defeat those tough defenses. It will lead to bad basketball sets. That the only good thing I see out of it is some teams walk the ball up the court, and then they barely even if there's no press, they cross them at half court at 8 or 9 seconds. That's going to end because then all of a sudden, if you're doing that, you only have 20 seconds of possession or so to really get into your offense, as opposed to 25. And those 5 seconds are critical. You might see more push on the offensive end, which would be good, but for the most part, I just don't think it's going to change much. You know when we tested out, it added 3 possessions to a game, something like that.
It didn't change, I think it was. So we're not talking about the pace of the game changing dramatically, but I do think the game will be impacted specifically for the reason Joby just mentioned. I'll let you finish. We need to move on to our top story.
We'll get to it in a minute. There's a couple other rule changes also, but I kind of agree. I mean, we did see the 30-second shot clock in some of the postseason tournaments at the end of last season. I didn't see any noticeable improvement, and I don't know. For me personally, I'm looking back to having grown up on the either before the shot clock or more importantly during the 45-second shot clock era. And was the game better then? I mean,
I think it absolutely was.
And so, how is shortening the shot clock going to make things better?
Yeah, a little bit of interesting data here. In the I believe in the 1970s, there was no shot clock, and the average number of possessions per game was 78. 78. Then when they instituted now again, that's not to say that there wasn't stall ball and there weren't ridiculous possessions that lasted 3 and 4 and 5 and minutes longer.
Dean Smith.
Yeah, Dean Smith. Thank you. But it was a faster game before the shot clock, and when they implemented the 45 seconds, it actually started to slow down. when they cut it down to 30 seconds or 35 seconds, it was in the low 60s. I think the average number of possessions were 62 or 63, 15 less than it was in the non-shot clock era. Now, again, you know, I'm not suggesting that shortening the shot clock actually slows the game down. I think there's more to it than that, and I think we all know what it is. It's the way the game is officiated, not necessarily the shot clock. I mean, it's just way too physical. When the NBA is saying the game is way too physical, that's a sure sign that it is. But shortening the shot clock is not going to improve anything, because that's not what the problem is. The problem is the way the game is officiated.
Now, we saw a couple seasons ago when they put a point of emphasis on trying to clean up some of the rough play and call most of these fouls. There were a lot of games early in the year where games took about 2 to 2.5 hours because of all the extra fouls being called, 2 hands on a player being called a foul now. Have teams adjusted to that yet?
Well, in my impression, they were starting to adjust. I realize that no one likes a foul parade, and those games at the beginning of that year were eye-gougingly boring and irritating because it was foul after foul after foul. But I look at it as not medicine doesn't taste good a lot of the time, and we had to take it to get the game back to where it was a good game. It isn't. I mean, essentially, what we have now in college basketball, especially in the post, is a rugby scrum. It's not about finesse. It's not about making basketball plays. You can't make basketball plays because you get knocked on your ass. They needed to call that, and I do think that it was working, but everybody was wanting and everybody was complaining, and they went away from it. That would have fixed the game. Had they just stuck it out for a little bit longer, I think we'd have a much better product on the court now.
Well, it's also the inconsistency at the time, though, if you remember. So, I mean, some officials refused to do the point of emphasis. Some followed through. And that, I think, was why it slipped away at that point. More than almost any other reason, though, the 2.5-hour game certainly made the TV networks not happy because they couldn't stack the games and were starting games late or in progress.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, just want to move on to another rule change that did pass that I think all of us are in favor of is they have eliminated one of the timeouts.
Yes. Thank you, God.
The rule had been 5 timeouts per team per game, with one of them having to be used in the first half. They have now decreased that out to 4 per team. 1 still needs to be used in the first half, so you can only carry over 3 to the second half. Should speed up the end of the game scenario when it's foul, timeout, foul, timeout, foul, timeout. It'll just be foul, foul, foul now.
There is one caveat to that rule, though. Within 30 seconds of the immediate timeout, I think with one exception, a team timeout can also revert to immediate timeout, so it wouldn't necessarily be count against them.
But I think that will actually speed up the game because we'll get the media timeout. It's not have a timeout, come back, have 5 seconds of gameplay, and then have a media timeout. Yeah. And I think that's what that was in place to avoid.
Yeah, I just sent you an email about this, Chad. It's hugely important, so make sure you check that out about these timeouts.
Check out my emails. Okay. Well, while I look for my emails, the other major rule change
to our top. Oh, how many rule changes are there?
The 3-foot restricted arc is now a 4-foot, which I believe is that the NBA restricted area now that they've gone out to.
I'm in favor of this one as well, but I don't know what it is in the NBA, but it needed to be more than 3 feet. I mean, all these block charges, the blarges, it's either one or the other. I'm in favor of expanding the circle.
No, I think it'll be, we've seen the improvements, in my opinion, that the arc, the 3-foot arc, was putting in place. I think the 4-foot will just make it even better, help. And hopefully David Griggs will be able to share what he brought to the classroom.
Yeah.
His dad.
Chad took it from me once.
Not if it's chewing gum.
A couple rule changes that did not happen, David. You'll be happy to talk about the non-rule changes, but I think it's worth addressing because it did come up they did come in for the women's game. There's 2 of them. One, The women starting next year are going to be using quarters, 4 10-minute quarters, and the other thing is that they're going to start advancing the ball to half court after a timeout, which is the NBA rule there. I mentioned those because this might be a change that's coming to the men's game in another year or two as well. John, let me throw this over to you. What do you think about both of those potential rule changes?
Well, I think the 4 10-minute quarters is also going to help break up the.
It won't pump anything.
I lost my train of thought here. I was.
What will it do other than change the clock, the way the clock is run? Somebody, please.
I'm thinking we should have tenths where we just have 10 4-minute tenths. Let's do that. I don't understand. Clearly, what this says to me is the people on the rules committee need some jigsaw puzzles or something. I mean, they need something to do. Where do they come up with this? I'm against quarters in general. I don't think the NBA should have them. I know I'm kind of out on a limb here. I don't even think football should have them. Just put 30 minutes on the clock. A quarter is basically a reason to stop when there is no reason to stop. Just keep playing. I like halves.
Well, it will give us 2 more half-court heaves per game, so a few more miracle shots maybe. Yeah.
Is that what people want to say?
But
how will they treat the ball transition? Will they go to the jump ball, or will they go to have possession last? Some high schools systems treat it differently than the NBA.
Well, right now the college game is using the position. Well, they're using the possession hour at the half, so I assume they're going to use it at the.
I assume that's the case, but you just never know.
The women's game was so great, and now they're ruining it.
Joby, how about this advancing the ball after the timeout to half court?
I think the complaints are that you're using timeouts for no purpose, etc. It adds drama. I mean, if you all of a sudden you're in a situation where there's less than 1 second on the clock or 0.9 on the clock, and you're able to move it to half court, you all of a sudden don't need Christian Laettner on your team. You can probably get off a decent shot. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. More last-second finishes will occur because of this, and if that helps draw eyes that may not be the hardcore fans in, I guess I'm in favor of it at the end of the day.
Well, that was kind of my impression.
To agree.
Yeah, I have been valid. I think this would be great for football as well. When you call timeout, you get to advance the ball all the way down to the other end by calling timeout. I don't understand why you certainly get to take some sort of warp to the other end of the floor. You should inbound the ball from where the timeout was called. That's just been my opinion.
And I'll be honest, if you make a shot from half court or you make it by the basket, I mean, it's the same thing. That should be 2 points, right?
Well, 3, but yeah.
That's my point.
Okay, well, I think Joby's now arguing that we need to get rid of the 3-point line.
Exactly, and of course.
Oh, they'll propose that next year. When they decide to go to fifths instead of quarters. We'll have 8-minute fifths.
David, one more rule change. This is not an on-the-court rule change. This is an off-the-court rule change that's been discussed. It has to do with transfers of players that have graduated. Right now, the rule is that if you have graduated and you want to go for an advanced degree that another school offers that your current school doesn't, so like an advanced degree in basket weaving, you could transfer it to Duke out of Kentucky without having to sit out a year. And I think they want to get rid of that and make you have to sit out a year.
They do want to get rid of that and either make you sit out a year or it just doesn't count as the transfer. And again, this is about academics first. That's what college athletics is all about. And they prove that it's about academics first by not having the proper understanding of what an academic transfer is. If you complete an undergraduate degree at Rutgers and you enroll in a graduate program at, I don't know, Seton Hall or anywhere else, you did not transfer. You re-enrolled in a different program. So really the only transfer that is taking place is in the minds of basketball coaches that really don't know what the hell they're talking about. If you graduated at one school and you enrolled at another one, you are not transferring. So really, we should not call it the graduation transfer rule. We should call it the graduation re-enrollment rule. And in my opinion, it should definitely be allowed. If you complete a degree and you enroll at another university, you should not have to sit a year.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I went to I got my undergrad degree at Rutgers in New Brunswick. I went to Rutgers Camden for law school. I didn't know that
transferred.
I didn't know that I had transferred, but apparently I had.
Yeah, well,
This is news to me, actually.
right.
Did you sign a graduate letter of intent?
So you transferred. I that's remarkable.
I'm going to have to change my resume, in fact.
Yeah. I mean, you might want to cover all your bases. I'd hate for you to get disbarred because of some technicality. Who would my lawyer be?
Now, I think David, stated it very well. But there's another little element that I always like to bring up with this. I actually am I'm on the player's side. Period. On their ability and their freedom to choose where they want to play. And it may cause mayhem, but I'm actually open to loosening the rules even further on pre-graduation and actually have real transfer rules. Right now, a kid's scholarship can be taken away at the end, year by year. So if it's taken away, are they allowed to ironically, if it's taken away, but yet they want to transfer to some smaller school that might give them an opportunity, I think in that case they still have to sit out a year, which is crazy. So it's all the chips right now are held for the most part by the school. And I'm not saying the player should win all of them. Every time there's a player versus institution fight, we should always side with the player. But in this one, I think, not just the graduate transfer, I say, or graduate and re-enrollment, very well stated. Yeah. I think a regular transfer rule. You should allow a kid to go as long as he's in good academic standing, blah, 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 that a regular student could do.
I agree. And okay, here's my trivia here. Someone's going to correct me. It's men's basketball, women's basketball, football, hockey, baseball. I believe those are the only 5. And it's men's hockey, by the way. I don't believe women's has it. Those are the only 5 that require you to sit out a year if you transfer. And you know what sports have the highest transfer rate by far? Those. So this does nothing to not men's basketball. The transfer rate is over 40%. 40% or more than 40% of students that enroll as freshmen don't finish playing their college ball with that team. And the reason is, it isn't that they're just jumping around and acting as free agents. The reason most transfers occur is because they're forced out by the coach. So I'm with Joby. The evidence shows and the data shows that making players sit out a year does nothing to lower the transfer rate.
And I think that the point here is, if on top of not having a graduation transfer rule, let's get rid of this entire sit-out period here. Let's just let a kid transfer, not have to sit out, and as long as we're not showing that teams are actively recruiting active players on other teams, which I think you got to slap somebody around if you're Kentucky and you call up Rutgers and you call up a kid at Rutgers and say, hey, come transfer to us. That's one thing. But as long as the kid is announced he intends to transfer, let him transfer. Why are you requiring him to stay at a school that he does not want to be at? This is his. As a part of education, don't you want the kid to graduate with a degree that he wants to graduate in from the school that he wants to attend?
Of course, but we just want that school to be our school.
Well, I guess now why don't we move on to our tops? Oh wait, I'm sorry.
Wait, no, we gotta get. There's nothing else we've talked about.
Yeah. Actually, one piece of news that did come out is the NCAA did it. David, calm down. Calm down. We'll get to you, David. But the NCAA did announce the academic progress rate numbers for next year. And we have 4 schools that have already been eliminated from the NCAA tournament championship contention. There are 4 teams that are going to be ineligible for postseason play. 2 of them repeats from last season: Florida A&M and Central Arkansas. The other two, Alcorn State and NJIT's new top rival, Stetson.
Oh.
I do have to ask the following question. Has anyone besides Florida A&M ever been a repeat offender under the APR rules?
Southern.
Well, Central Arkansas this year, again, is a repeat from last year as well.
Yeah.
So we got 2 repeats.
What's going on? So Southern is in the clear.
Yes, Southern is in the clear now. They do have 2 full years of academic data, which is you have to have your number needs to be at a certain point over a 4-year average or a 2-year average.
Yes.
They do have 2 years of data now, so they will be in the clear and eligible for postseason play this year. That's my understanding at this point, at least.
What happens in APR if you have, for instance, 30 years of cheating? You know,
they tend to frown
but
upon
won a
that.
couple of national titles in the process. I understand.
Let's talk some North Carolina then, Joey.
Nobody cares about them. They're getting to. Oh wow, this actually is a story. Holy crap!
I actually, you know, a lot of people, you know, you have 2 sets of people mainly who reside in Chapel Hill who say, oh, there's not enough, all the players are graduated, everything's clean now, nothing, you know, slap on the wrist, maybe a grand talking to. Then you have the other side that says Penn State football equivalent penalties, etc. I happen to reside kind of in the middle. I think the reason why I brought up North Carolina on this topic was because of APR. I actually think something along that lines, because it was an academic issue. You know, oh, it's not in the court, it's an academic. Well, APR is an academic issue also. I think something like what UConn faced, and the fact you add the fact that they were found for obstruction. On top of that, a couple of scholarships here and there, not a death penalty, but a one-year ban, postseason ban does to me make sense, because what they did, and that's why the scholarships will come in, they did was worse than what happened at UConn, for instance.
Oh,
it's not like a power program hasn't ever been hit with a postseason ban before in the recent memory.
Now, here's another kicker for North Carolina, though. They've talked about the availability of the courses in question, or whether or not they've been made available to the regular student body. Turns out the student athletes at Carolina have been getting supposedly preferential treatment or access to these courses that other students typically did not get.
And this has resulted, actually, the news this week that one of the academic agencies that accredits colleges has placed North Carolina on probation because of this whole scandal.
Yeah, the Southern, Saxcock, which is a great name for an accrediting agency. The best name. When you get smacked around by Saxcock.
It actually is very important. It's a legitimate academic measuring stick schools take.
It is unprecedented for a Division I school to lose its accreditation. But if essentially to lose your accreditation, you really have to earn it. North Carolina has been put on probation, which means they've been given a set of directives that they have probably a year to meet for when Saxcock, I love saying that, goes in and investigates again. If you lose your accreditation, and you may recall Wisconsin-Milwaukee almost did. I don't remember the exact year, but they almost did. You cannot receive federal funding, and you cannot participate in the NCAA athletics. That would be one of the biggest stories. I think that would be SMU-like as far as the relevance of that if UNC lost its accreditation. I seriously doubt it would come to that.
Cool. Let's UNC, for all the problems this scandal has, UNC is legitimately one of the public ivies out there. This is a very sought-after, tough-to-get-into, good academics, regardless of this, overall school. And that's part of the shock here. This isn't one of those schools where it's a football/basketball factory, blah, blah, blah. You know, so we kind of expected it. Yeah, UNC, shocker, athletes got preferential treatment on getting classes, etc. But the fact that this ran so deep into the school as well as the athletic program, it's actually shocking to me that I never thought I'd see North Carolina be the one who would do something like this. I thought it would be, somebody else, some other school.
And there were 5 level 1 violations, and I would just like to say good luck with that.
Well, on that note, why don't we turn now to well, actually, before we reach our top story,
we got to get to the top story.
We will in a minute, but a story came out of Hawaii actually, and Hawaii was probably
on the Pacific Ocean.
Well, Hawaii had an interesting story last year because right on the eve of the season starting, with all the stuff that was going on in the program with their head coach, Gib Arnold, they actually fired him on the eve of the season. Benji Taylor came in, actually had a great year last year. The team finished, I believe, near the top of the standings of the Big West, made the Big West title game. Benji Taylor then ended up losing his job, and they've got a new head coach coming to this year. But now the interesting news is that Hawaii is suing its former head coach, Gib Arnold, because he was hiding all the improprieties that were going on in the program.
Can I just say that I think Hawaii is way more awesome than I ever thought they were? Wow. That's incredible. I hope they win.
Well,
it's either a lot big cojones from Hawaii to try to do that, or hurrah, hurrah for them. There is no happy medium when you do something like this.
Wow.
And normally it's the other way around, where coaches who are fired without cause are suing the school, like Jim O'Brien in Ohio State several years back. Yeah. This is the first I've heard of a school suing the coach in question.
And, it makes me wonder if behind the scenes Arnold wasn't threatening to bring suit against the school, and the school said, "Hey, let's go on the offensive here and go after him first." It kind of makes me wonder that, we'll see how this plays out. And it could have set some interesting precedents here moving forward if the school is successful and gets a significant judgment against him.
Spoken like a true lawyer, Chad.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about it. If the school ends up with a postseason ban and they have a good year this year, that's going to cost the school money, thanks to Gib Arnold.
Yeah. I mean, it does set precedents that, like, you have legal recourse if a coach cheats. I actually hope they win this.
I don't know. Does the CBI and CIT pay money for games like the NCAA?
They take money. The CBI, it's run by the Gazelle Group, which is one of my favorite organizations. I think my feelings about them are very well documented. And essentially what they do is they bend you over and take your money in exchange for letting you play.
Okay.
It sounds like they're doing Hawaii a favor here.
Yeah.
Right, but I mean, the bigger question is, what if Hawaii was good enough to make the NCAA tournament this year?
Which they almost did a year ago.
As they almost did a year ago. But let's move on to actually before we reach our top story. One other thing one other piece of news. UAB. We probably should have addressed this at the top of the show. We were talking about alignment, but they are not going to be moving out of Conference USA. They were on the verge of getting thrown out. This is probably more of a football story than a basketball story, but
why are we talking about it?
UAB is going to reinstitute football somehow after thoroughly destroying their program by losing everybody.
Kathy Ireland, I still hear, plays in the women's soccer team.
Yes.
Yes, this is necessary roughness at UAB. I think they will actually have TV coverage. That's the one thing that ban is no longer in effect anywhere in the NCAA. But other than that,
wow.
Yes, because it would affect
dig up
other
Scott
schools
Bakula to be quarterback, and
in the year you've seen thrown around on the internet is 2016, but yet they really haven't introduced a plan. One of the issues, and again, the conference would have to work with them on this, is the 76.5 rule, and that is you have to average 76.5 scholarships over a 2-year period to play at the FBS level, and there have not been many waivers given out for that recently. I believe Tulane got one after Katrina, but that was an extenuating circumstance. Georgia Southern did not get one. Marshall did not get one. UAB, I would imagine they're planning on asking for one, but I don't think there's any precedence that they would get it. So the other question is...
Let me stop you right there, because I didn't know this. Marshall, we're talking 1970s plane crash. Marshall did not get it?
I misspoke. I'm sorry. did I say Charlotte and Georgia Southern did not get them recently.
Yeah.
I missed. Marshall, I don't know if they had this rule back then, but I can't imagine that they would not have gotten it.
Yeah.
Because that's a little extenuating.
They did play
Nuking your own
football
program
for
is not
seasons,
extenuating.
though.
But CUSA has all but come out and said UAB will remain. I think that's great for their basketball because God knows where they would have landed otherwise. And again, is it kind of disappointing for Georgia State, who seemed primed to make the move over to CUSA in UAB's place?
But UAB did bring money to Conference USA thanks to the NCAA tournament.
Yes. So, and they're hosting the conference tournament again next year.
Yes, that news did come out. They're hosting both tournaments, and all teams will be in it. We'll get that into details of conference tournaments as we move further closer to the season. But I guess with that, well, let me start. John and Joby, are there any other topics, news, and notes that either one of you want to?
No, there isn't.
I think we've covered the summer session pretty well.
Okay. Well, on that, as we move to our top... Oh, actually, I'm sorry. One more piece here, David. This was big news here. This is important, and I want to get to this because we're starting to run a little bit short on time here, but we've got a little time left. NCAA Division III Lakeland College out of Sheboygan, Wisconsin there.
What are you talking about?
A new women's head coach, Aaron Nestor, was announced there. David, your thoughts on Aaron and how he'll do at Lakeland College?
Who the hell cares? It's Division III. He's out of the Sheboygan Press today. Oh, Nevin, what has he got? I'm sure he'll do a fantastic job. Good for them and their program.
Okay, well, with that, David, I know you're chomping at the bit.
Unfortunately, you seem to be breaking up, David.
Actually, we did forget one thing, Chad, and that's
No, we didn't!
Yeah, we forgot the Big Ten ACC matchups have now been revealed for this upcoming year.
Okay, John, can you run through those for us real quick? Do you have them in front of you?
Yeah, we've got 4 big games coming up. One is going to be Maryland going to UNC. We've got Joby's Virginia team playing Kyle Land's Ohio State team. We got Indiana going to Duke. And we also have Louisville going to Michigan State.
Yes.
And the puppet is shaking.
A rematch of the Elite Eight.
Correct. I think all 4 of those sound like great games. That's one of the great things we love about the non-conference season. You get some of these matchups like this. One matchup that we are not going to get this year, though, is Kansas against Missouri. David, I know you've been waiting to talk about it. The border war. And I'm sorry, David. I'm sorry.
We've got to get on to this. So this is,
David, please. I'm sorry. We are actually. I just found out we are out of time for the night. I'm so sorry. But we will try to get to this later.
Can't believe. God.
But for John, Joby, and David, I'm Chad Sherwood. Have a great night, everybody, and we'll talk to you again real soon.